we're going to install this next to WeBoost by Wilson Electronics. This is basically a cellular signal booster, so if you're out somewhere where you have a bar, you're really not able to download or upload anything, this, they claim that will boost your signal enough that you can work and get what you need done up to 32 times better. We're going to test it before and after, and we'll see the statistics on how much we're boosting our signal. But we're about to do an unboxing and see what's in here. We're going to kind of plan it out because we're installing it on a vintage Airstream, so there's a lot of particular nuances that a normal trailer wouldn't have. We have a lot of ribs, a lot of harder time running these wires. We're going to have to get pretty creative and figure that out, so it's going to take a little bit of planning before we actually start drilling holes through the shell. It appears to be a pretty simple install from everything that we've gone over. We've already unboxed it. I just want to go over some of the components of this install, which is really three main components here. You have your main WeBoost mobile unit. So this is what everything plugs into and is the powered section of it. It can be powered by both 12 volt if you're boondocking, which is really the more dynamic option for most RVers. But you can also have it to where you just plug into a standard wall 110 connection. So what you have two options there, which is a really nice addition to this product. You have a roof mounted antenna. That is this. So you need to find a place to mount these antennas. Typically, they give you the default brackets for a ladder. So these mount on the ladder and it will stick off the back of your RV. We don't have a ladder in these vintage Airstreams, so today we're going to have to find out how we're going to mount it on the roof. There are a few components up there that we've scouted out, and I'll show you that. And then off this module you have the internal antenna. So this is what needs to be placed within 10 feet of the device you're using to boost its cellular signal levels. So this product also came with 20 feet of coaxial to run your line, the drill bit to make the proper size hole in the outside of your unit, as well with the pass-through kind of waterproofing connector piece that will keep rain from getting in that hole. Some other random stuff which I don't know if we'll need yet, so we'll find out along the way. Stay tuned. So with the installation of this WeBoost, in any trailer installation, you're going to have challenges running the wire in. Now in a vintage Airstream, all those complications are amplified tenfold. You have small space in between the outer and inner shell. You have ribs that run everywhere that are impassable by wires. So unless you pull these shells off to run a wire with new holes, you're not going to be able to run your wire. So you have to come up with new and creative ways to get those external coaxials inside. So what we've come up with is there was an access point for the original TV antenna. Now what it did was they would come down and they would run next to these refrigerator vents that go out. So that's going to be our in, so we don't have to drill a new hole. Now we had to get creative of how do we run these power cables or the coaxial down and out of sight. You don't want an ugly wire hanging from your wall. Well, we poked with our sticks here and we were able to find an access point where there was no rib between here and this dormer window. So we're going to run the coaxial from here through to the dormer, hide it behind this valance, and then run it behind a curtain that's going to be here. This is really the best option. You will be out of sight and out of mind. Now the other thing is, what do you hook the power up to? Fortunately, we have a 12 volt drop right here. I'm going to run this optional 12 volt connection powered up. We're going to drop the mobile unit behind this couch and you won't see it. Now, when it comes to the internal antenna, they have this beautiful long stretch of counter. This needs to be within 10 feet of your working device. So if you have a 30-foot trailer, this isn't going to reach both ends. Now, your option, and this is a beautiful setup for it, you can set this here right by your mobile unit if you're at the front of the trailer working. And then if you want to go to the back bedroom, get on your laptop and do some work there, you can run this with the extension all the way down to the end. So this is a really good setup for this Airstream, and I'm excited to get started on it. The approach for running the cable is a big a big factor in this installation. Now, how we're going to approach it is we're going to pull it from the inside out. A lot of people think you start on the outside and pull it in. It's counterintuitive in this situation. It's easier for us to start the coaxial here behind this first access point, run it or pull it to our exit point. This is a old vintage refrigerator exhaust port for the old ammonium refrigerators that are still in use today, but they had these nice vents installed. Now these have outside access. All we have to do is run it, sneak it under the dome that's covering it for rain protection, and then we can run it along our roof line to our installation point for the antenna. So in order to get through this first stretch behind this interior shell wall, we're going to use this fiberglass wire pulling kit which we've already run through. So you can pull these out, and if you have your wire attached to your coaxial, it's going to pull right through with it. So that's the first and arguably the most critical, hard to do step in this process, which we've already got figured out. So let me show you how to do it. First, attach your coaxial to the end. So I use electrical tape in a lot of my installs because you can tape off the end and make a nice kind of pointed end, so that if you hit something, it's not going to snag on a lip of, say, the coaxial piece itself. Don't be afraid to use extra tape because you don't want to lose your wire once it's in there, because then you have to start over and pull a new fiberglass rod through. So now we're all set at this end. Now we can start to pull the fiberglass rod through and pull our cable with it. So we're going to feed it in together. And if you feel resistance, don't be afraid to stop and figure out a new angle. And we're through. So now I can unhook this, untape it, and we're going to run it through the ceiling to our access point. So I'm pulling a little extra line through because I have to run this up into about 3 feet past me in that direction to mount the antenna. So make sure that if you do that, you leave enough line for yourself inside. For the roof installation, we need to put this external antenna. Wilson provided a few mounting options. The default, I would say, would be for a rear ladder. I don't have a rear ladder on this vintage Airstream, and I'm going to show you our adaptation for how we're going to get this mounted. But we have something that's about the right size, and I wanted to show you how you would mount this bracket. So you have these clamps. You wrap this around your ladder, slide this piece over. These would be off, so this would be sitting right here. And then you tighten it through your bracket right here. As you tighten it down, it's going to pinch your ladder and have a really secure mounting point there. We are not going to do a ladder installation, so we do not need these brackets today, but I do need the mounting bracket itself. We have an old vintage antenna mount that's still on top of the Airstream. I'm going to drill some holes, run some bolts through it, and it's going to be securely attached that way. The way that the antenna itself mounts is you have your coaxial attachment and you have 2 screws. You take the screws off, place them in the bracket, tighten the screws back down, and now you have a securely mounted antenna on your ceiling. So in our case, this vintage Airstream does not have a ladder, as we mentioned, but it does have a few components which we had the ability to mount a bracket to. We're fortunate in this case that the original, those old vintage antennas that would come up and open out, the original holder for it when it was in its down position is still here. This is a perfect mounting place for us because I can drill holes, attach these bolts to it, and set our antenna dead center in the center of this Airstream. So that's the approach we're going to take, and I'm going to show you that now. Is place our bracket where I want it to lie, mark it, and then drill the holes with my drill bit. next step is attaching our antenna to our bracket. To do that, I just need to unscrew these screws, slide the coaxial through the hole, attach the screws back, and I'm ready to bolt it down. So one of the things that I notice in a good product is things that will lead to longevity. And I like that they included locking washers on the bottom of this, since this is going to be in an area that's going to consistently get hit with high winds and be knocked around. So locking washer is a good call for this product. The last steps for installation is to attach your external coaxial and bolt it to its final location. Sometimes you get ahead of yourself and you attach a coaxial where you need to put a bolt. So I gotta undo this real quick. In order to keep the coaxial from blowing around during travel, I got a few short pieces cut of Flex Seal tape in gray, so it's going to be very low profile. I'm just going to run that across in 3 places. Just help her from blowing around. So the installation of this external component is complete. It turned out to be way easier than I was thinking. The coaxial came up right through the vent. The attachment of this bracket was just a simple pilot hole and then bolting it down. And this would be way harder than the default method of mounting it to your bracket where you just need to tighten down some bolts. So I'm really impressed with this installation of this external component. Just be careful when you're walking on the roof, especially vintage Airstream, and follow the rivets. So I pulled myself a little extra slack to run our coaxial on the roof. I didn't need as much as I thought. So now what we're going to start doing is pulling the line back the direction that we're going to be heading now, which is towards this module here that'll be mounted below the couch. So we're just going to pull this back gently. Alright, and as you can see, when this panel goes back up, this coaxial is going to be hidden out of sight behind this balance. So the next step in this process is we have to hook our module up to 12 volt power. Now you have the option of just plugging it into a wall outlet, but that's going to restrict you to situations where you're hooked up to power. In the case of Lynn and Michael, they're on the road doing a lot of social media, a lot of blogging, which requires a lot of data. So they have to use their cellular services even when they're hooked up to city power. So that's why 12 volt in this case is the better situation. So they had a 12 volt right here, which I'm going to wire into. So if we gently pull this out, you'll see our connections here. When you initially pull your panel off, don't freak out when you see all these wires. If you're only looking for 2, and it's usually marked as a 12 volt, or it looks like a car cigarette lighter, and it's 2. These are the only 2 wires. One's usually going to be white, and one will be a different color. So originally, I was going to hide this fuse box that's in line behind the panel. What I realized is to get it through this panel itself, I would need to have a hole bigger than this fuse box. That's not going to work in this case. We want to keep this intact. So I'm going to hide this behind the couch and run some nice 14 gauge wire. Basically just extend this wire all the way up and in. It's also going to match the wall a lot better, just a better decision. So that's what I'm going to do now. Okay, so now I'm going to splice into the lines. So I've spliced my line in. Now I'm going to add a cap on the end and tape it off so that when it's behind the wall, there's no chance of it coming apart. Okay. So at this point we can tuck this back away. There's a curtain hanging here, so we decided to drill a small hole through the valance, run the coaxial. It's going to nest it real nice behind the curtain. You're not going to see it. Everything's going to tuck behind this couch, and you have a really low visible install. Wilson Electronics gave us a really nice set of zip ties to help kind of conceal the wires as you're going, so that's nice. We're going to use those right now. And just to keep this behind the curtains where we want them, we're just going to throw one zip tie on here. Trim the excess. Oh, there's 3 components that connect into this. You have your internal antenna, external antenna, and a power source. We've run our external antenna, our internal is ready to go right here, and our power source is wired up. So let's go ahead and hook everything up and then give this thing a test. And now we're wired up, we're ready to plug her in and see if she works. We got a green light. So I guess it just innately starts working. So now we can test our cellular devices and see if we're getting that boost in the Airstream. We got everything installed and we want to test our signal. Well, we struggled with it for a bit because it turns out Apple has turned off the ability to measure the decibel readings on iPhones. We called customer support. They were very helpful and they let us know that basically just use our bars until we can find an Android which can give us the actual readout. Now, the way we do this is if you step outside of your trailer, away from the antenna, get a bar reading. I don't know if y'all can see that. I'm at 2 bars right now. So this is the signal that the external antenna is getting. So now if we move inside, we should get the boost, which tells us the improvement. I'm actually at 1 bar. 1 bar outside. So if we move in close to the WeBoost, bringing the phone inside, putting it near the internal antenna, I'm getting a full 5 bars. So that means that my 2 bars were amplified to a full signal strength through this WeBoost, which is as good as you can't get higher than that as far as this indicator. So I don't know what that is on decibel reading, but this is a great measurement, a great indicator that this is working as intended. And just like that, we're finished. That's a wrap on this installation. It turned out to be very simple, really. It's just pulling a few wires, hooking it into your 12-volt system. We did it as hard as you can. It still turned out to be an easy installation. If you use their brackets to mount it on a ladder, that's easy. If you just plug into your 110-volt, it's easy. We also showed that we got a signal boost, a really nice one, in this trailer. So all in all, this was an easy fix, something that can go in any trailer. We've showed you some ways to customize the installation, and really it's going to benefit being on the road and boondocking and just staying connected when you're disconnected. Thanks for watching, guys. We're all about vintage Airstreams and making things easier for the next person, so hopefully you took something from this, and we'll see you in the next installation.